Welcome to the Seed to Success podcast, where we deep dive into the strategies, stories, and smart decisions that help VAs and OBMs grow and thrive. I'm your host, Adrienne Donnelly, and whether you're just starting out or looking for ways to take your business to the next level, you're in the right place. Thank you to our episode sponsor, the VA Lead Network. If you're looking for high quality, vetted client opportunities, the VA Lead Network is where you need to be. You can preview available client opportunities on their website at valeadnetwork.com.au. And as a listener of the pod, you can enjoy 30% off your first month or year as a new member with the code Friends of Seed. That's all one word, all capitals, Friends of Seed. Now let's get into today's conversation. Welcome back to the Seed to Success podcast. My name is Adrienne Donnelly and I am the host of the podcast and the owner of Seed Virtual Assistants. We are very, very thrilled to be joined today by Bec Sands, an amazing visibility mentor. And I want to jump straight in. Bec, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's so wonderful to be here chatting with you.
Thank you. So let's get straight into it. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you became, or what led you to becoming a visibility mentor and what that means.
Of course. I'll try and keep it as concise as I can because it's quite a long story. But essentially I've spent about 20 years, nearly 20 years in PR. So I started my career in corporate, spent about 12 years in corporate, and then sort of realized that I wanted to do something different. Like I wanted my own business. I wanted to have a little bit more impact. I wanted to something to feel a little bit more purposeful. And so I actually had a lifestyle blog to start with. So I did that for a couple of years and just kind of pursued that passion. And then I met some people in the blogging industry who were life coaches. And I was like, okay, this sounds really interesting. I didn't know what it was, but I thought if I do, I ended up doing the Beautiful You Coaching Academy 6-month certified coaching course, which is, certified by the International Coaching Federation. It was really cool. I did that in 2015. That's a long time ago now. I think I was the second year of it. It's still going today. And essentially I was just doing coaching on the side of my corporate job. And while I was doing all this development, I started to get into leadership positions in the corporate world. So it actually kind of helped my career, but I still wanted to leave it. I just had to work up the courage to leave my job, which took quite a while of doing things on the side first. So when I first stepped into my business, I was doing career coaching for corporate women. I was a career transformation coach, so helping women get promoted and, into leadership positions and change careers and get pay rises and things like that. So that was really great. But then the more I stepped out of the corporate world, the more I felt like I kind of just felt like, no, I'm kind of out of that now. I want to support people that are becoming entrepreneurs and women in business, just like me. So, and I've been in business for myself since 2019, so 6 years. So I kind of disconnected a little bit from the corporate coaching. And I became a personal branding thought leader coach initially. What happened was then I kind of was promoting myself as a personal brand and thought leader coach and working with people and working with my PR clients and working with coaching clients to support them. But I found there was so much confusion around the term personal branding, and it didn't really reflect the personal branding that I did in PR, because that was more positioning people in front of the media, having them on TV, a lot of kind of, thought leadership messaging. Whereas personal brand was more considered like the way you present yourself on social media or your design or, and I found there was a lot of confusion there. And then when I was rethinking my brand strategy for my business and looking at the future and the vision of where I wanted that to go, I sat down with my business mentor actually, and I was like, this is the essence of it. I just need to encapsulate it somehow. And that's when I kind of came up with the concept of confidently visible. And I was like, this kind of captures it, because essentially that's what it is, right? That I do both with my PR consulting and with my coaching. And so I really just felt like this is it. This is what it is. So now I do support women in business to become more confidently visible and put creative work out into the world and overcome those visibility blocks that I've been really challenged with as well. And also I still do my PR consulting with corporate brands. So I've got kind of multiple, revenue streams, if you like, and multiple sides to my business. It still keeps me in the corporate world and driving that along, but it also from a consulting and business perspective. And it also enables me to do what I love, which is supporting women to become more confidently visible and move through those blocks.
Yeah, what amazing work. You mentioned then those mindset blocks. Do you see certain common mindset blocks, or does it vary across those, working in corporates versus working for themselves? What are some of those blocks that you're seeing when it comes to women really stepping confidently into being more visible?
Yeah, so one of the biggest blocks that I see is that people feel like they need more accreditation or more education, or that they don't know enough in some way. And so I think the first instinct for a lot of my clients is to go, okay, I'm going to go and do another degree, or I'm going to get a master's or an honors, or do another accreditation of some sort, even if they've got multiple degrees and multiple, don't get me wrong, I love education. Like, I've got a degree myself in media and marketing from Macquarie, but there's a point where also it is holding you back. Like, there is a little bit of imposter syndrome there that is telling you, no, you don't yet know enough. You need to get more education and you need to know more before you can put yourself out there. So honestly, that is the biggest block that I see come up time and time again.
It's interesting. I think there's often, two schools of thought, and maybe this comes back to how we were raised and the values that our family put on education around, how important those qualifications or accreditations are. For me, I went straight into corporate, straight out of school. Like, my job back then was called the mail girl. I'm that old. That's what it was called. And I did some
with the fax machine.
Yes, the fax machine.
Yeah.
Even better than the fax machine were those yellow internal mail envelopes that you would put things in and walk them around the factory that I
remember them.
in. Yeah. For us that were born, in the 80s or before. So I think I started studying a little bit at TAFE. My role reported into the HR department. So I did a bit of TAFE education, really loved that, got great results. Started university, lasted 6 months. Like, it absolutely wasn't for me. And now, 20 plus years on, I've got, multiple businesses and by my definition, I'm a successful business
Absolutely.
woman, but for me and, maybe my family and things like that, the qualification piece, that like, our parents were fine if we did, fine if we didn't. And some of us did and some of us didn't. And I think sometimes that can, I see VAs and OBMs in our space that will often be going, well, I don't have a qualification, I don't have a business degree. And it's a great example, both of us with two different backgrounds, but both now running successful businesses that, that doesn't necessarily, for some industries, sure, unless you're, doctor or lawyer, I would like a degree, please, if you're
100%. Yes.
But for some, it doesn't need to hold you back. And sometimes that can be our own story or our own stuff that we're putting on ourselves.
Oh, 100%. And even in marketing, like, it's not essential to have, a degree. And I've worked with clients that have, 20 plus years experience, and they're like, oh, but can I really go into those leadership positions because I don't have a degree? And I'm like, honestly, who cares? Like, that's 20 years ago. That, like, you've got all of that experience that is worth so much more than a degree. And I think that's the same for, like, executive assistants or virtual assistants or anyone. Like, the experience is so much more important, really, than like having a degree. I mean, what did I even study? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's great to have that if you're so drawn to it, but truly you don't need it unless, like you say, you're a doctor or it's in those fields. Yes, absolutely, because there's a degree of technicality and science around it that you need to know. But in those kind of creative fields or support services, it's a lot of really experience and learning and knowledge and that you get on the job.
Yeah, absolutely. For those, majority of the people listening and watching the podcast are working
Oh,
in the VA or OBM space or
yes.
starting to think about it. And primarily our industry is made up of women. Why do you think it is so important for them to be really showing up and being more visible in their businesses?
Yeah. So, look, I think if no one knows about you, how can they know to work with you? How can they know what services you provide, how you can support them? VAs are absolutely amazing. I have worked with VAs in the past, and I had a very specific niche that I was looking for when I hired my VA. And I was like, I really need someone who can support me with the design element because, like, you know me, I'm so bad with design. Like, I'm terrible at putting any kind of like aesthetic together. I'm all words. And I 100% admit that. I'm like, I need help with the design stuff. So, in Canva, I can do the very basic stuff, but it takes me like 10 years, to do anything. Whereas someone else might come along and do it in an hour, something that would take me all day. So there was very specific things that I needed when it came to hiring a VA. But going back to the point on visibility, how do people know what you specialize in if they don't see you and can feel your presence? The other thing is it's really attracting those aligned clients that want to, that want to work with you and want to hire your services. If you're not being visible, they just can't they might go with someone else who is visible, it's because they can see it's front of mind.
In terms of the practicalities about showing up and being more visible and being more confidently visible, are there some practical, ways that you can see that really works well for VAs and OBMs?
So I think one of the best ways for VAs to show up and be visible is to really understand where their ideal client and ideal audience is at and to show up there, right? So, I think we can get so, overwhelmed by all of the different platforms that are available to be visible, right? So, like, oh, I need to be on TikTok. Oh, I need to be on Instagram. I need to be doing a story every day. I need to be on LinkedIn. I need to be doing webinars. I need to have a podcast. It's like, yeah, all of those things are brilliant, but choose what's going to work for you and choose what you're going to be able to be consistent with, because that's more important, is to show up in front of your adult client and build those relationships and build that trust and communicate who you are, what you stand for, what's your unique story? How do you support your clients? What are your passions? Like, are you a VA that's really into being super organized and having systems and processes? If so, let's talk about that in front of your ideal clients, So choose a couple of channels that are going to work for you and then just be consistent on them. I think, like, just don't get too caught up in trying to be everywhere and do everything and say everything. And don't also compare yourself with everyone else and someone else who might be a little bit further on your journey, because, you never know what's gone in the background for that person to get to where they are today and to the amount of followers and the amount of engagement that they are. So definitely don't compare yourself, on someone else's journey.
It's such a great point. I remember a few years ago, I had a really, on the outside, a highly, highly successful year in business. I was winning awards. I was working with amazing clients. I was getting great feedback. Financially, I was having the best year I'd ever had on the P&L. And every time I run into friends, they're like, oh my God, like, I'm just so proud of you. You're doing amazing. You're winning these awards like you're doing. You've started this other business. And my answer would always be like, yes, and I've never been sicker in my life. Like, the amount of money when I looked back that I'd spent at the doctors trying to work out what was going on with me, I had no idea. But at the end, it came down to burnout. And I know that sounds cliche, but it genuinely was. And I felt like such a fraud, because all of this stuff all over social media and, in different publications and whatnot was like, oh, it's amazing, amazing. But that's why I felt like a duty almost to tell people, I'm like, that is not the reality. Like, I've never been sicker. My relationship's not in a great place. Like, I'm not keeping up with my friends. I've missed important dates. Like, and I think that, to your point around comparison, is really a great reminder. And it is so hard. Before we started recording, we were talking about those things that, we know that we do, that when we know that they're not great for us, off the back of your podcast episode about being, suffering from anxiety and still trying to show up. Like, that scrolling and comparing, it can be really difficult. You mentioned there about your ideal clients, and that's a question that we see a lot when VAs and OBMs are getting started, is like, okay, I've done all of this. I've got the insurance, I've got the great onboarding, I've got my branding and all of that. It's like, now where do I find clients? And often you'll hear, members of the seed community and other VA mentors and training organizations say, okay, well, like, who's your ideal client and where are they hanging out offline and online? Obviously, online makes it a lot more accessible, but if your clients are all allied health professionals, then they're probably not on TikTok. Maybe.
Nah,
Maybe
exactly.
they are, but they're probably not. You're more likely to find them in Facebook groups, like through associations and things like that. So I think that's a great reminder. And you don't have to be on every platform, on every social media app, on, every single different channel. It's like, where are your clients hanging out? And be there consistently and just do one or two platforms, but do them really
well.
kick ass instead of being across everything and doing them all kind of average.
100%. I really think it can feel very confusing and overwhelming, but if you just come back to the core of it, which is getting clients, is really about building relationships and communicating what you offer and making those offers. That's all it is. It's very simple, but we overcomplicate it because there's so many platforms, and then we're looking at what everyone else is doing, and then we're going, oh, maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. Shiny object syndrome, it's a real thing. And I've fallen into that trap, particularly in the online world, so many times over the years. And I'm like, everyone else has this secret that they know that, they're getting clients through that secret way. And I don't know what it is. Like, I need to find what that secret is, but there truly is no secret. There's no one secret to it. It's a matter of building up those relationships over time, getting some testimonials about your services, sharing social proof, doing a good job for your clients so they want to work with you long term, and really focusing on the delivery of the services and the quality of the services you provide. Because if you're doing a really good job, then I guarantee there will be, word of mouth shared around about you, and you will, land more clients as well as be able to work with your current clients long term as well.
Definitely. I've heard people say over the almost 10 years I've had my organised by Adrienne business, my client-facing VA business, that they make an assumption that our industry is made up heavily of people that are introverts because you're behind a screen, you're working from home, you don't have to be in that office environment. And whilst, yes, there is a portion of our industry, like any industry, that are made up of introverts, it's not the case. But I want to speak specifically to those people that are listening that may feel that they are more on that introverted side. And the idea about visibility and showing up and being really visible in their brand, they're just like, stop listening, Adrienne and Bec. Like, this is not for me. What would you say to those people, or when you've worked with people that do classify themselves as an introvert or more toward, and I understand it's a scale, but more toward that side, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, look, I think I'm a mix of introvert and extrovert. Like, I'm definitely very extroverted, but I love my alone time as well. Like, I don't think I can go back into an office and be around people 24, like all the time, not 24/7, really, like 8 hours a day. I'm like, oh no. I do love my time where I get to just focus and like step back from people. So I completely get that. I think, what's worked really well for me and my clients as well is just to really compartmentalize the visibility piece, because just think of it like, it is fun to separate yourself sometimes from it, but it really is important. And, and think about, like, I've heard it described as like an alter ego, like an alter ego. I think there's a book called The Alter Ego Effects by, I think it's Todd Herman, that's really good to check out. So you can do that. But I feel like it is still authentically you that you're putting out there, but it's almost like if someone that you're hiring, and so you don't expect for them to work for you 24/7. So, like, think about your visible persona. It's almost like it is you. It's absolutely you. It's authentically you, but you don't have to be that 24/7. Like, we all have different elements to us and to our personalities. So I think it's like really compartmentalize and go, okay, cool. That could look like there's only an hour a day where I'm online and sharing social media content, or it could be even less for you. I don't know. That might sound like a lot to some people. For me, I'm like, I have to stop myself from being on there all day. So it's like nothing. But yeah, it's like really compartmentalizing and also batching content where you can, and just thinking of it like this is just another task in my business, even though I know it can feel really personal to put yourself out there, but just like, cool, this is just another activity that I do, like reconciling my finances or something, if like the visibility piece is just another business activity and I do this at this time and then I can batch 3 social media posts for the week or whatever, or batch record podcast, and like for my own podcast. And I think that's kind of really the only thing you can do, and you'll get better at it as you go, because ultimately we need to be visible if we've got businesses and we're growing businesses. Word of mouth is great, but it's not going to be everything, for the long term. So you do need to be visible, but you can definitely put some boundaries around it.
I love that concept of it's almost like, a hat that we wear, like being a sister or a mother or a great neighbor, part of a netball team, whatever that is, to be like, okay, this is my, visibility hat. I'm going to step into that zone for an hour. I've blocked it out in my diary, got an hour a week, an hour a day, an hour a month, whatever that looks like for you, depending on how visible you need to be to reach those business goals that you have. I love that concept of sort of, like I just have to be this, and it is still who I am. It's just one of the hats that I wear. I don't need to be that person.
Yeah.
40 hours a week. We've talked a lot about that kind of online and digital visibility. You and I are both lovers of networking events, getting involved in community events, especially those that attract professional women in the region. How, and I mentioned before, the latest episode of your podcast talks about how to manage if you are someone who's been diagnosed with anxiety, how you manage that when it comes up to showing visibly. That's something I've definitely experienced as someone who has been diagnosed with anxiety when it comes to the in-person events, and sometimes just being like, especially if I don't have anyone to go with, really feeling that anxiety coming to the surface. What are your sort of tips or things that you have seen work for either yourself or clients in terms of the offline, the in-person sort of visibility and showing up at those, networking events or catch-ups, those sorts of things?
Yeah, look, I think have a specific goal in mind, and make it kind of achievable. So maybe it's, I'm going to chat with 3 people at this event, and just connect in and, and that's it. And like, because it might be an event of hundreds of people, like that's overwhelming to think about trying to get around that. It's like, nah,
not going to happen.
No. But can I chat with 3 people that, maybe one of those is someone I already know that I've seen at other events, and then I go up and have a chat with them. And then maybe one person is a new person that I just go up and introduce myself to, maybe share LinkedIn details. And then the other person is someone else. So like just have in mind, like really what's the focus, like have a bit of what you're wanting to achieve from going to that event. And obviously it's not just what you get out of it, it's like what you give as well. So like, chatting with people and going, oh, like who could I connect them with, and think about them sometimes as well. That can take the pressure off being worried about yourself sometimes, and that goes to speaking as well. When you're thinking about, oh, how am I going to be perceived and da 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 da, if you just kind of switch it and go, actually, this is about the audience, which is kind of another bit of a visibility tip as well. But like in terms of being at events and networking, you could think about, oh, I wonder who I could connect that person with that might help them, And then that kind of brings up other questions like, what's that person's goals? What are they building? What are they trying to achieve? So it kind of flips it onto the person that you're chatting with at this networking event, so that you can get a little bit more information out of them. So that you can kind of go, hey, like, what is it? What is it that you're looking to achieve, and how can I support you? And that always opens people up. And that's just a nice way of reciprocating, rather than just making it all about like, right, who can I network with today?
Yeah. And I think it takes the pressure off us, and by reframing it, instead of being like, what are people thinking of me? What do I need to get out of it? It's like, how can I serve? How can I be of support, or how can I help the other people in this room? And I love that idea of setting achievable goals, even if it's just like, I'm just going to stay for 1 hour. Now, if you get there and you feel okay and you feel comfortable and you go, okay, I can maybe extend that. I think I'm comfortable to stay for another 15 minutes, another 30 minutes, something like that. Or if you make it to the hour and go, okay, I've exhausted everything I can do in terms of being visible and showing up, and I'm proud of myself because there was a part of me that wanted to sit in the car and not get out, or not turn the camera on, or, you know, not turn the Zoom on or something like that. I think having those little achievable goals, I think it then almost spurs you on to be like, okay, well, I did that. And it almost gives you that momentum, similar how we were talking before we got on the show about doing those things that you know are not going to help when you're not in a great space. And then they kind of work in the opposite way, where they just keep fueling that story. Those little achievable goals can actually then give us that momentum to keep going and to be like, okay, well, you were scared of that, but you did it. And so you could do it again when the opportunity arises.
100%. And also just know that everyone's going through stuff. Like, you know, I think when sometimes it can feel like if we've got anxiety or something, it's like only us and no one else has these feelings. You know, it can really feel like that sometimes. But it's like, no, this is pretty normal. You're okay. Like this, you know, everyone, anxiety is a normal feeling. All of the emotions are normal. It's just that, you know, we don't really talk about the darker emotions that much, you know?
Definitely. Yeah. I remember we had a networking event recently for a women's professional network that I'm on the board of, and it was a great event, sold out, lots of people there, great, and all of that. And then afterwards, we're all sort of packing up as a committee, and I was like, I'm really ready to go home. Like my social battery, I'm out, done, you know. Yeah. And two of the other three people in the conversation said, honestly, I was ready to message today and be like, guys, I'm not up for peopling today. It's a great example that, you know, often it's not just you. There could be a horde of other people in that room that are feeling the exact way. And sometimes I feel like almost by sharing it, if you feel comfortable to be vulnerable, it almost normalizes and makes it okay for other people to go, yeah, I've had a really crappy day too, and I could have easily just gone home and not come. And then everyone's like, oh, okay, like I'm not the only one who feels like this when they come to events, but we're in it together and we're still doing it.
Everyone feels like that before they go to events. Like it's a little bit like, oh, who am I going to meet? What's going to happen? I don't know. It's the unknown. It's the stepping into the unknown. And I think, that's with anything where you're putting yourself out, you know, and like increasing your visibility. Obviously, it's going to be uncomfortable at first. It is the unknown, but you get better and better as you do it. So start small and start with something that you can do consistently. And it might be little, like maybe you don't want to do video, but you could do maybe some audio. Maybe you could do a couple of podcast chats with people that you've really, like, you know, you love their podcast. You could pitch people in your network. You know, just start really where it's just a little bit of a stretch out of your comfort zone. And then you can kind of keep building on that as you build more confidence. Because what will start to happen is you'll start to realize, oh, I've actually got this no matter what it is. And that's where you want to get to. It's not like I'm never going to feel nervous again. That's not even possible. You know, it's like you want to get to the point where you're like, cool, I'm like, you know, I'm nervous. Maybe I think about that as being excited. But you kind of go, but I know that I've got this.
And every time, like you said, like you're sort of strengthening that muscle, and it does get easier. You know, the first time it might be like, I can't do this. It's taking me 4 or 5 takes to put this thing on my story. And the next time it only takes you 2 or 3. And then next time you go, oh, that's done now. I'm going to get it up. It'll disappear in 24 hours. That's okay. The right people will see it. And it just gets that little bit easier the more you kind of flex that muscle.
And you'll like, all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, you'll just do a story and film it and you'll be like, done. Took me 30 seconds. And, you know, whereas before you might have deliberated over it for 2 hours and then like, you know, stressed about it and whatever. But then you realize, oh, actually, it's done. Like I'm getting much better at that, you know? Yeah. And I think that's the case with any kind of visibility or anything out of your comfort zone, really.
Yeah. If people are listening to this and they're thinking, you know, I have felt these ways and I'm ready to kind of put a bit more into showing up confidently and showing up and being more visible, what are some of your kind of 1 or 2 key pieces of advice for someone who's thinking, okay, I really want to take this seriously and really work on this as a goal?
I think have a bit of a strategy, even if it's like, you know, the word strategy, I feel like we can get a bit scared of that because it feels like a big piece of work.
Yeah,
but you can
feels like a 40-page document.
Yeah, it feels like a 40-page document. You're like, no, I don't, like, what is that? But you could literally just have it on one page. It doesn't need to, you're not building like a huge, company or something like that. You're just wanting to put yourself out there and increase your visibility. So you might just, put together a one page that has objectives, like what am I trying to grow? And maybe it is a big company. But, it can just start small and you can kind of go, okay, what am I trying to build with my visibility? Is it like attracting, clients? Is it, growing a business that supports me in my lifestyle and the way I want to live my life? Like, so what are your objectives for your personal brand, for your business, for your visibility? And then have a think about how you're going to implement that. So it's like, what are the tools? Who is my ideal client? Where are they? Where could I reach them? What's realistic for me? What do I enjoy doing? How often am I going to do it? And then a little timeline, and go, okay, cool. Like I'm going to do, a live stream on Instagram every Friday.
Yeah.
Like, so what does that look like for you?
And just something really achievable, bite-sized, break it down. And I think, when you mentioned before, like carving that time out in your diary, putting it in there, making that just part of, like you would send your invoices or respond to emails, making that almost a non-negotiable in your diary, in your calendar, and to say that is the time where I'm going to record that video or write that blog or schedule out 2 social media posts for next week or research a networking event and buy my ticket, and really prioritize that time and make it a non-negotiable.
100%. And another good thing to do is to reward yourself after with something that you really enjoy doing. So let's say, you're doing live streams and it's new for you, so it feels uncomfortable. And you could reward yourself straight up to that by like going to get your nails done or going for a walk or like you're, watching a TV show that you really enjoy, so that you'll start to, like, let's say you were doing, the live streams every week. Then you could have a reward for yourself that you give yourself after that live stream every week. And you might actually start to look forward to it.
Yeah. That little bowl of ice cream, that's my reward, a bowl of ice cream. And like at the end makes it all worthwhile.
Exactly. And then you're like, oh, I can't wait for my ice cream. And, I'll build my ice cream. And then it just makes it like your brain starts to associate that with a pleasurable experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I love a good reward system.
Yeah.
Bec, if people are listening and they want to find out more about the work you do or listen to your podcast, I know you've got some speaker training that you're going to be rolling out this year. What's the best way for them to connect with you and learn more about the way that you work and to tap into those resources?
Yeah. So you can go over to my website at becsands.com. There's links to everything there. I've got my Confidently Visible podcast as well, which you can check out on all good podcast platforms and on socials, Bec Sands.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your incredible tips and for encouraging us all, even when we really don't feel like it, to show up more visibly and being confident to show up more visibly. It's been great having you on the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Seed to Success. Make sure you're following along so you never miss an episode. If you have friends in the VA or OBM space, feel free to share this episode if you think they may get something out of it too. A very special thank you to today's sponsor, the VA Lead Network. For more information about their amazing business, head to valeadnetwork.com.au and make sure you check out the episode description for a very special bonus from our friends at the VA Lead Network.